Hello and welcome to the Car Care Shop. This is a 2019 Toyota RAV4 with the A25A FKS. This engine, since 2018, has become super popular in a lot of Toyota models and Lexus models. In today's video, we're going to fix one of its common problems. They're actually starting to develop, ironically enough, front timing cover leaks. Thought we fixed that, Toyota, but here we are. This is a new thing with these. Not all of them are affected. I don't see them a lot, but this one is definitely leaking. Let's do this in this video. First, let's lift the car up, show you the leak, pull a few covers, we'll take a look at it. Then, we're gonna actually do this job in the car, and as we do that, we'll talk about a few things, and we'll go through the whole thing so you guys can see somewhat the internals of an A25A FKS right after this. Let's take a look at the leak. So if you come around, look all the way up through here. See all that oil? If you trace it all the way up to the top, it's actually the very top of the timing cover. Not a huge leak, but it's a leak nonetheless. It's forming drops. The owner of this car actually has an extended warranty, which is that came to the saving grace. Otherwise, we would have told them, save up for it, just wait for it to get horrendous before we do something. But they are saying that there's a little bit of smell, like after a long drive you park the car, it just smells like burning because that area is very hot to the engine. So here's the plan. There's two ways to do this. You could just do it the long easy way, drop the subframe, engine transmission down, do it calmly right in front of you, wide open, super simple, or you can do it in the car. I was planning to do it I usually take the long, easy way, because that way, this is how it's meant to happen. We don't have issues, things go smoothly. This one, we're not gonna do that, because the cradle that we use to hold the subframe and bring it down is tied up with another 2GR. So we'll take this opportunity to hopefully we don't regret that, pull the front covers. There's actually two front covers on this car. So front cover, timing chain, another front cover. Not gonna take chances. We talked to the extended warranty about this. They agreed. Let's not take chances, do this twice. Let's just go a little bit more. Do the inner cover as well. Be done. We don't have any more leaks. Having said that, we're gonna put you guys on a time lapse as we tear this down. We'll take a full tour of this engine once it's torn down, and wish us luck. Tight space. And I've actually built a couple of these motors, so I'm a little bit familiar with it, with some of the interesting stuff. Talk about it. Let's get right into it. The A25A engine, I still remember like it was yesterday when 2018, close to 2018, when it was coming out. I believe the first car we saw it in was the 2018 Camry when it first came out. I mean, at the time when the first new one arrived, or technical training or whatnot, you open the hood, you look at it, it's like, wow, long gone are the simple four cylinders that we used to have that had nothing complicated, everything was simple. Actually, we were mistaken. This engine is one of those engines when you look at it, it's like, wow, long gone are the simple days of the past where things were simple. Actually, that's not the case. And looks can be very deceiving. There's one thing about the A25A. Let's start with the basics. 2.5 liter, 4-cylinder, super high-tech engine. Not necessarily from like the working on it part, but from the technology behind it. So this was the first dynamic force engine, meaning the kind of the angle of the valves and the laser cut, whatever the case. Basically it has an interesting timber flow. The biggest thing about this engine though, it has a very high thermal efficiency, meaning it utilizes a lot of the combustion to actually turn it into energy. I am hoping I'm explaining this in the best way possible. So, very efficient engine. Very, actually, initially we thought it was complicated. It's actually very basic, the way everything around it works. It's compact, it's small, Everything is really well packaged. It has a lot of technology and a lot of firsts. This is the interesting thing. So this was one of the first dynamic force engines, one of the first non-hybrid engines in Toyota land that uses an electric water pump. Flat out, all of them used it, and all of them still do today. And there was a lot of changes. This is the first time where, you know, you're working on Toyotas for a long time, you feel like, okay, we're in a new generation of engines, because there's a heavy use of 8mm bolts all over. Things are very different. This was also not one of the first, but another one, maybe the second plastic valve cover engine, and D4S, and new generation EGR, and then the dealer W16 oil. This was the first engine, and then the variable oil pump. We've never had a variable oil pump before. This was one of the very first, or first four cylinders to have it. Initially, technical training was like, wow, we're in for a disaster. Electronic PVTI, thing looked super complicated. However, as time passed and as the miles rolled and as some common problems came about, but most of them were either a campaign or production issues, this engine, I like it. I like it a lot. There's one thing about this engine that you should know. They are extremely rattly. This is one of their, a lot of folks can actually have concerns about it. It's very loud, very noisy, extremely noisy. However, in 2025, I find this engine in almost every single model across the Toyota Lexus lineup that needs a four-cylinder. And then from this engine, you actually have multiple iterations. You have the A25A, 2.5 liter. You have the M20A, which is a 2 liter. You'll find it in Corollas, a few other models. And then you have the T24A, which is the newest one. You'll find it in Tacoma, Highlander, a lot of other models, Lexus side too. That one, the turbo iteration of this engine. And then technically, even though I don't think it qualifies as one, the V35 is also a dynamic force engine because it's the V35A. I don't think that's the case because that's a V6, and that's probably the only, how should I say, the trouble child of this family. So let's put it this way. But all of the other ones, this engine is good. I mean, the more I work on this engine, the more I realize, you know what, there are some strange stuff like the thermal management valve, that little coolant valve that goes out. Kind of a strange design and location, but otherwise, I like this engine. They're not known to kind of develop catastrophic stuff. I remember the first one that I took apart, it was actually a RAV4, just like this one. I believe it was a 19 RAV4, and the thing had like 2,000-3,000 miles. It drove us through a puddle, it ingested water, and it was really bad. We ended up replacing the transmission on that because it was full of water, rust, it wouldn't shift right afterwards. So that one was the first time, actually, I believe in the region, where we completely tear down an A25A, and everybody was very nervous about it. Okay, we're going into a new engine, we have no idea what we're doing. But I remember one thing about this engine. It has a lot of parts. There is a lot of little stuff everywhere. Then the second engine, I believe they put the wrong oil in it. They put some ridiculous like 20W50 or something like that. And it started developing metal and like knocking and whatnot. We ended up replacing that as well. But overall, I don't recall a bad moment with an A25. I've seen a few, and this is through now in the shop, they have a lot of miles. Seen a few with interesting wear patterns on the walls. I don't think 10,000 miles is a terrible idea for this engine, but we've seen some scoring on the walls, but I haven't seen one burn oil yet. Doesn't mean I'm just one person working on Toyotas. That doesn't mean they're not out there, but so far so good. Because lately Toyota with oil burning, because of the 10,000 mile oil changes that are not helping, we've been having a little bit of a pattern with oil burning. We'll see if this one ends that pattern, because four cylinders always tend to be more prone to that. Well, Let's look at the live video, the front cover. I gotta say, very, very skinny front cover and very nerve-wracking to actually kind of release the sealer. I mean, the adhesion is so good on this, but why is it leaking? Because there's one spot that it didn't have that. But a little nerve-wracking to kind of break the seal and pull it out because the thing is very, very thin. That's why we have the two front timing cover design. I gotta say, this is one of the thinnest ones. Let's go to the live video and talk about it. So we got the first timing cover off. I want to show you a few things which are interesting. So this motor, the A25, it's got hydraulic control on the VVTi on this side. You see, this is the oil control valve right here. You see this plunger? The actuator on the outside pushes it, and that's what changes the timing inside the gear. But this side is electronic. I want to show you something that is super cool. Jose, if you get a shot this way, look at the angle in which this could change. It is unbelievable. Look at this. Ready for it? See that? That's how much it could change the angle. So here's how this works. Look at the cam. When I turn the cam and look at this gear and look at the cam. Look how much the cam turns before the gear actually gets to turn. So here's what's happening here. You're changing the timing of the valves. So the way this works is you got a motor here. If this motor speeds up a little bit, it's going to turn this internal part faster, and it'll turn the cam to either advance or retard the timing. And then if it spins at the same speed at any given point, it's going to hold it at that. That's the cool thing. And what does all that is this little motor right here. This is the motor that does that. Pretty cool, right? How this tiny little motor can spin. I mean, let's say red line on this thing is 6,000 RPM, 3,000 RPM, that you could actually speed up from that and down in like a millisecond. Very cool. This is, folks, that sounds, we always talk about it in the car reviews and whatnot. It sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. It actually isn't. There's nothing. This motor, power, reverse, speed, kind of vary the voltage to vary the speed, and then that little gear. That's it. There's no oil contamination. There's nothing to break. Motor fails, it'll take you 5 minutes. It'll take you longer to calibrate that motor than to replace it because it's right here. 3 bolts, it comes out. This gear, yeah, you have to remove the front cover, but this is not a bad job. This, as you see, it's not really that bad. So here's what we have to do now. I'll show you the front cover in a moment. That's actually not the only thing we are doing, because this car has 2 timing covers. If you come and look here, you still have this cover which sits behind the timing chain. So I'm not gonna go in here and, oh, let's see what happens if we just do the front one. Customers don't want that. They want their car fixed. Got extended warranty. Extended warranty agreed that, hey, let's do this once, do that right, be done. Let's do both covers. We're there. We're done. So here's what has to happen for that second cover to come off. You see the very bottom, there's another timing chain, that little one. That's for the oil pump. The oil pump sits, you can kind of see it from here. We come down. Here's your oil pump. Here's the oil pump. And here's that little guide that puts tension, has a little spring. And that's the second chain. So this engine has 2 chains. Here's the interesting part, and this is, talk about it in a little bit. They did this to avoid an area. When we pull the second cover, you see it better. Between the cylinder head and the block, there's an area where they meet. Before, you used to have sealer there and it used to leak from there, or at least that's what they hoped that was the case, because here we are doing a front timing cover again. That's why you have the 2 cover deal. So it kind of bypasses that, and we'll see it when we pull it. But let's take a look at the first timing cover. There is, for lack of a better word, this is just a piece of aluminum. Nothing. Not like the old ones where the oil pump was here. There's absolutely nothing here. It's just a front cover, pretty big one. And not a lot of parts have to come out to do this. This is that actuator for the second one. So all the computer does is push this or pull it in to change the timing on the exhaust. Pretty cool. I like that they're getting heavy on this stuff. This is an insulator. All this does is this insulate noise and vibration. Same thing with this big one. Look how big this thing is. They never used to do that. You never had these. And the belt tensioner, pretty simple. Also, if you look at the back of it, insulation. Are trying to quiet things down. And this is probably, other than the V8, like the UR series V8, this is probably the first 4-cylinder, as long as I know, that has a front mount alternator. So the alternator normally in Toyotas, you'll have a bolt here, and like a movable sleeve or sleeve on the second ear. This was the first one that goes this way, other than the V8, the UR series. I like this. This is simple. You take the two nuts, one bolt, comes right out. It's a small, tiny little. Look how small this alternator is. Because remember, on these new cars, these alternators are not meant to charge a dead battery. They're just meant to maintain it and barely keep the electronics running, because they don't want a big behemoth alternator that draws a lot and now emissions, the gas mileage, and everything drops. The other thing that was unique to this engine, that was the first time, is these coils. See the skinny coils? This is the first time they used them, and I'm trying to see. Yeah, they are made by Denso, because Toyota and the 2GR are switching to another manufacturer, not Denso. It's called Diamond. I don't know what's the deal with that. They're not Denso. Maybe Denso got in the doghouse with Toyota about that. I don't know why, but this is a Denso. This is not a difficult job, but we're about to get into the, not difficult, but the delicate part of it. Because this timing chain, it's not difficult to time. It's a little jumpy motor because of this gear, but the chain tensioner on this motor does not have a lock. I'll show you that when we get it out. So we keep saying, well, we'll do that when we do. Why don't we just do that? Let's pull everything out. We'll take a look at the tensioner, pull the second timing cover, and then we'll get this job, start assembly. And that's like we talked in the video. Didn't need to drain the coolant, because here's the water pump. It's not in our way at all. I just completely zoned out, so used to doing any kind of engine work. We'll just drain the coolant, drain the oil, and let's move on. Hey, I guess the customer got a free coolant replacement. The water pump on these, a little bit tight. It's right there, but still not difficult. If you remove the mount, it's right there, super simple. Thermostat, on the other hand, if you're not removing stuff, it's all the way down here. That's the thermostat. It's actually part of this little plastic elbow. Turn the light here so you can see it. There it is. And you notice there's a connector at the back of it. This wire, this is a heated thermostat. So if they need to, they can just rapidly kind of turn on that heater. It'll open the thermostat immediately. That's interesting. One last thing I'll show you here. This engine does have roller rockers and hydraulic lifters. You can see the rollers right there. I hope if you can get them close up. Oh, this one is not a good one. Maybe this one. I don't know if you can see it from this angle. That's a roller rocker, and there's a hydraulic lifter. Pretty similar design to like the AR, the UR, the 2GR. Similar but different, because the rockers are smaller and they lock that before the other ones don't lock. And then this little contraption here, that's what your high pressure fuel pump is. So if you notice here, there is another roller. The camshaft actually pushes on this and down, up, down, and that's how it, kind of like an old school. Think of the high pressure fuel pump as an old school fuel pump from all back in the carburetor days. That's exactly how they work. This is, of course, a little bit more high tech, has like a pressure control and whatnot, it has a solenoid, but this is basically how it works. This is the best way to have a fuel pump. It's very reliable, it can really bring high pressure, so that's how they did this. Let's get the second, or timing chain off and all that stuff. We'll do the second timing cover off, and then we'll talk about everything else. So one thing I'll tell you, the timing chain on this engine is actually very simple to do. And at some point in the video I said it's a jumpy engine, so the timing chain can be interesting. It is not as bad as, say, a 3UR, or like that's the 5.7 V8, or the 2AR, the 2.5 before this one, these were really jumpy engines. You really gotta be like right on to set the timing chain, set the tensioner, otherwise they'll jump. This one, not as much. Not as simple as some of the older ones, like a 2AZ is like, there's no resistance with the chain at all. But timing chain is extremely simple. I mean, as complicated as this engine looks, it's extremely simple. The only thing that is interesting, two things. First, this is an engine that does not have a guide between the gears. So a lot of Toyota engines, 4-cylinders in the last 5 years, let's put it this way, has been, before this engine 5 years, has had a guide between the two chains. This one doesn't. That's the first thing. And as far as I remember, this is one of the first modern Toyota engines that does not have a mechanically locking chain tensioner. So if you know there's a common problem with the V8s with chain tensioners rattling, I have reason to believe if this did not have the locking part, it would have been a disaster because the chain would have jumped. But they have the lock, so no matter what happens with this tensioner, it's not going to back out. It's going to only back out a little bit, but not all the way. This one, on the other hand, it will back out all the way. You know what this design reminds me of? Nissan, I'm not sure what the name of the engine is, but it's like a 3.5 liter V6. They have the same thing, and it's such a strange design. At the time, I thought it was very strange, and here we are. Toyota has it now. It's the same thing. One thing I'll say about this front cover, it is extremely confusing why there are so many bolts holding it on. I mean, there's literally at the bottom 4 bolts right next to each other. I'm not sure why we need this many bolts to hold it. And when you're pulling the first one, you will have a tendency, if you're not paying attention, to pull bolts for the second cover. In that part, if you're ever doing a job like this, you gotta pay attention because it's very easy to miss a bolt or remove a bolt you don't have to remove. That's one thing. Let's go back to the live video. As the inner cover comes out, we'll talk about it. So we got the second timing cover out. If you are a Toyota technician, I don't know why you'll be watching this, but in case you are, if you worked on this engine, you've done a block, whatever the case, I'm going to show you one thing. Isn't this our worst nightmare? This little thing? If you know, you know. If you don't, this is an oil nozzle. So supposedly, this lowers the oil pressure going into the block or coming out of the block. Actually, we really tried to find out exactly what the purpose of this is. Nobody has been able to do that. If you forget this engine will have no oil pressure. And it'll be your biggest nightmare because you will be just the first time. I have forgotten it once. So the first one I did, I think it was a flood car. So the ingested water, so we pulled the engine out, we reused a lot of stuff because it bent a rod, but everything else was fine. So I forgot this. Put the engine back together, the new engine, new short block, new everything else, put it in the car, and then I turn around looking at the block for a bracket. And then I saw this because it had, by moving it, it just popped out a little bit. I'm like, what is that? Pull it out. Oh my God. Then I went to research and this is a nozzle. So we took the front cover again, put this, and this goes behind the back front cover. Very ridiculous design. That's all I'm going to say. So let me install it. And in case you don't know where it goes right here. That's where it goes. It's a common pitfall of this. If you're a Toyota technician, some Toyota technicians finish the engine, started. Yes, we're done. Started, no oil pressure, and just now you're scratching your head. Why? Well, that's why. Toyota, I'm sorry to report that all the efforts to not have a front cover leak. Check this out. So, in the past, this area right here, where the head, this is the cylinder head, this is your head gasket right in this area, this is the block. Where this area meets, if you have sealer going around here, this is a very vulnerable area. because you have like kind of a divot here where the gasket is. And you have to put a lot of sealer here, make sure it's very clean. So they decided, oh, well, we're gonna bypass this whole area, not have sealer here. So actually there's sealer here, oil is in this area, oil in the bottom area. There's nothing here. You see some sealer here. I think this is, if I remember correctly, I spoke with somebody in design and they said this is for vibration. So this wouldn't vibrate and break the seal. That's all this does. There's no oil here. But if we look at the cover, here's the second front cover. So, do you see how this area has oil? This area would have oil. There's nothing here. Well, there is now from the leak, because the leak is actually right here, right this area. That's how all of it started, this debacle. Another spot I think it is as well is here. See these lines? Like, some of them are brownish and they have a weird appearance. Some of these may have been a channel that was spraying oil. I see some other spots here and there. I believe the leak is somewhere in this area, not really in the front, because if you look at the front, we got really good adhesion all across, except in this area. I see a lot of these typical spots, especially this one right here. And if you notice, there's another one right here. There's another no adhesion spot, but this one didn't leak because there's nothing. Actually, no, I think that's fresh oil. So, sorry Toyota, but didn't work. Still have leaks. Because, and this is, I'm just going to go out and say, if you're an engineer, God bless you. Maybe I'm wrong. But just, my humble 2 cents. Back at the dealership days, we always used to write reports, reporting stuff that we see and whatnot. We always used to tell them oil contamination. You're assembling this engine, and some folks have actually commented on the channel that work at the factory and says it's impossible. We take all the precautions. Then why is it leaking? So obviously, it's the same thing. I don't think this was the problem. I think it's something with either this sealer or an assembly. There's no other thing. There's nothing wrong here. This car has very low mileage. Here we are leaking. And I think this has been leaking from day one. It just slowly, gradually grew to a bigger leak. Yeah, that's the reality. So here's the valve cover, which is a plastic. Good quality plastic. I don't have a concern with that. If you look at a few interesting details though, this is the baffle for the PCB system, and here's another baffle for the oil fill. They have these O-rings here. Actually, all the sensors, like this is the cam position sensor, these bolts actually hold the valve cover. It's a couple things. The gaskets have been getting flimsier and flimsier. You notice in the past, this section of the gasket used to be so much thicker, now it's very thin. That's one of the stuff we notice. And then you have a kind of a nozzle that sprays on the cams. That's pretty typical. That's how just a little O-ring feeds through one of the caps and sprays. This is the opening for the high pressure fuel pump. Then we look at the chain itself, and this is where, yeah, let's have a talk. If you go look at GM, I think they're 3.6 liter V6. They have time and chain issues, or had. I hope they resolved them. I've actually done one of these time and chains, and I remember when I pulled this, like, this looks like a bicycle chain. It's so small, so cute. So is this one. I really hope we don't have time and chain problems, Toyota, because this is not the same as the AR, the UR, basically all the ZR, all the engines had a very hefty, the GR series, they all have a hefty chain. It's heavy, it's thick, and then the links are huge. They're tiny, look at it, tiny little links. Second one is not a problem, because this basically does nothing. This is just to spin an oil pump. We don't have a problem. Let's look at the guides. So one guide is full plastic, and I'm looking at it. We don't have any brakes. The cool thing is, and I have the tensioner right here. I want to show you that. This is something new. The tensioner actually sits into, see how it like sits in a slot. That was never the case. They used to have a design where you have like two ridges here, and the tensioner just sits in that ridge. It's big, and if you're not careful, you could break the guide. They have a little bit of a different design, but let's look at this guide. That is a perfect guide. That's a really good news. Of course, you're going to have a shadow of the chain, but there's absolutely nothing worn on it. Let's look at the other guide, which is steel backing. This is an old school Toyota design. Now, the guide material is the new stuff. We used to have like a much thicker and just stronger feeling, but again, it's just a feeling. But this guide has zero wear. That's what you want. That's really a good sign. I just wish this was at least aluminum, plastic. It feels like good quality plastic, but still, or this one. This one is solid. That's not going anywhere. There's no shakiness, or this is solid. That's not going anywhere. Then we look at this one. Although this is not, an important one, doesn't really do much. Also, not worn. Looks great. This is just for the oil pump. So this is, if you look at this little chain, so this is the crank, and this connects to the oil pump, and this little guy just puts tension. This little spring puts tension on it just to keep it. I mean, they have timing marks, and I'm just gonna say this: many Toyota technicians actually do not time the oil pump because they see it silly. I agree. I've always timed them because it takes you 2 seconds, and it's like, do we really need to find out what happens? It's not worth it. There's no challenge here. But some have not timed it, and it's been fine. So there is that. This is the control valve for the oil pump. And usually, this is actually a very easy way for you to see if you have debris in your engine or not. This is very easy, accessible. Just pop the tire, pop the cover, and one 8mm bolt, which is this one. That's a new thing as well. Pull it out and look. Look at this one. It has very little, see a little bit of debris? Nothing over the top, just a little bit. I want to say it, but I don't want to say it because I don't want folks getting in stuff that delicate, very delicate. This, not a terrible idea to pull it out and clean it. DIYer, but again, if you take care of your car, you do oil changes on time, this will always be clean. There shouldn't be a reason why it gets dirty. But this is the A25A. It is, in my opinion, and we're gonna have a small talk right now. Some folks, Toyota's going through their turbo engines and the whole thing with the Tundra, and I get it. These things are failing, and we have a recall and kinds of stuff. Kind of been a while for Toyota to have engine problems, but this engine, folks, I like it. They do have their issues. We've seen issues now, the new developing issues, high pressure injectors leaking or causing misfires, and you're chasing after goats. And by the way, you can see part of the rail here. This is the rail. The direct injectors are actually right here in this area. So you pull the manifold, they're very accessible, and the port ones are right here. So this has D4S. But going back to this engine, we had issues with, I want to say this valve, well, either this one or the one underneath it. This was actually covered by a campaign, so they took care of folks. But otherwise, small oil leaks. For some reason, there was a period where oil pans were leaking on relatively newer cars. But otherwise, things have been good. There's been production problems, blocks, porous, things like that. That's usually when the car is very new. But we've seen plenty of examples with over 200,000 miles. But I gotta say one thing. You look at this car, this engine, when it's fully assembled and all together, it's like, whoa, this looks super complicated. Folks, it is not. You want to know complicated? Go open the hood of a new Tundra. That's complicated. It's just not. I mean, think of it this way. What makes an engine complicated? Let's have a quick talk about this, because folks will just be disliking new engines and talking things about them. But let's define something. Engine that has no major common problems, like engines blowing up for no reason. This doesn't have that. Second thing about this engine that qualifies an engine in my book as a good engine. You don't have to tear half the car apart to do things. Meaning, you don't have to pull the engine out of the car to do things. You can do a head gasket on this engine in the car, because we're basically not far from it right now. Pull the intake manifold, pull the exhaust manifold, EGR on this side, cam tower comes out, cylinder head comes out. You could do it in the car. That's what makes an engine, in my book, serviceability wise, 10, 15 years later, a good engine. You don't have to tear half the car to do anything. Everything you could do here. And that's the cool part. Some folks dislike the electronic water pump. I understand that when they go out, you have no warning, but these cars have gotten so smart that they will detect when the pump is not doing what it's supposed to do. So you'll get a check engine light. So maybe with engines like this, don't ignore the check engine light. At least look into it and see what's going on to understand. But I like this engine. And then this is, some Toyota technicians will not agree. So on the 25 Camry, apparently they're having some leaking issues and whatnot, some production little issues. But I like this engine. It's not turbo. It's have D4S. We don't really have giant chronic issues. Simple to service. There we go. Front timing cover, timing chain. You can do it in the car, no problem. Cylinder head in the car. EGR has been good. We don't have issues with EGR so far that I know of, that I've seen. And the only issues we have current, that is kind of trending, if you would, direct injectors leaking, causing misfires. And luckily, again, you can do them in the car. They're nothing really over the top to replace them. Expensive, yes, but so let's say something. I like this engine, folks. I really like it, because you could do everything in the car. To me, that's what makes an engine good. Is when you need to repair it, you don't have to spend $7,000 to replace a $3 O-ring. This is not the case. Folks, here's what's going on in real life. Here's what's going to happen for you guys in a few seconds. It is the end of the night. We've been working on a very long day here at the shop. It's been very busy lately, and you know, we're blessed. Folks trust us with their cars, and we really appreciate that. But my back is not happy right now, because I did a hybrid battery on an LS600. That was not fun. It strained my back a little bit. So it's about, what is it, Jose? 9:30 at night, 9:45ish, something like that. Too late, let's put it this way. So I think we're gonna call it a night for us. I'm gonna go home. We're gonna work on probably 17 cars in between, something like that. And then we're gonna catch up with you guys. It'll be a few seconds for you. It'll be the next day, at the end of the day of the shop closing at 6. And we'll put this thing back together, because we got a lot of cleaning to do. So it'll be not 20, let's just under 24 hours. It'll be a few seconds for you when the next day. Welcome to the next day. Let's answer the most important question, a question that every single owner of an A25A at this point in the video will be asking. What are the chances that your engine will leak? Well, that's a very good question. I'm going to be honest here. I have seen now 2 leaks on this engine that are, don't want to say they're extremely common and it's like every single one will have it. It's going to be the front timing covers, either the inner or the outer. We've seen oil pans. Oil pans, however, that was like a wave of them. I feel like there's something happened at the factory, and then I don't see that wave anymore. Seen actually, as I filmed this video, as we filmed this part and edited today, I had 2 crown signias with this engine, no leaks. So that is not a chronic thing. However, why do they leak? Well, if you work at a assembly plant and you're going to probably say this is impossible, I think contamination. I think that's the only reason any seater job will fail. And because I've seen it as well when technicians are careless and they don't clean very well, it'll also leak. Not right away. give it a few thousand miles, it'll start developing a very tiny leak. Because remember, the front cover is not a pressure point. You're not sealing like an oil pressure passage. The chain will be throwing oil at the cover, but there's no constant pressure. So it could be a very small leak that develops over time. And that's something you need to know about this. I think it's contamination. See, let's have a conversation. If you work at a factory, God bless you. You do a great job. However, let's be real here. What is the number one enemy of quality in the automotive industry, in the repair industry, for technicians, for mechanics? Flat rate. You are basically incentivizing this technician to work extremely fast, finish the job right away so we can get paid more. That is always the enemy of quality. No matter what, it's just not, that system is not meant for quality. That meant for in and out, let's do things very quickly. But equally, at the assembly plants or car factories, it's called takt time. Basically, at a car factory, they are not producing one car. When I'm working on this engine, I'm going to start on this job, finish it to the end. This is my car. I'm putting my name on it. I've been inside this engine. We're going to do everything perfect. But at a car factory, they are producing hundreds, if not thousands, of these all day long. That's all they do. The more they produce, the better things will be for the factory. That's how this works. So takt time is the time allowed for the team member or the worker to complete their tasks. And those takt times, let me say one thing, and if you all work at a factory, please chime in below, because so we can kind of double confirm this. Takt times are usually extremely short. I mean, something unreal. Granted, the person that works at the factory, there is an entire mega minds of engineers that designed the production system. So it's very efficient, very optimized. It is really overthought and gone through multiple times to make it as efficient as possible. So you're not going to see a factory worker carrying something extremely heavy. You're going to see a robot carry it. You're not going to see a factory worker setting up their torque wrench. No, it's already preset and ready to go. You're not going to see a factory worker figuring out where this goes or that goes, because everything is systematic. And the biggest thing is factory workers are trained. They do this every single day at a very fast pace. But at the same time, they are humans, and short takt times make things, you can't double check things. You can't, this is, from my understanding, and if I'm wrong, please comment down below. They don't want you to think. They want you to follow procedures without question, because there's an entire giant department that decided how we're going to do this. You can't just change things. That's how chaos starts. That's how problems happen. When the person doing the job says, I know a better way. You can't do that at a car factory, because you are one piece in a very large puzzle. And if that piece falls apart, you may throw off the whole puzzle. That's how this works at a car factory. I have reason to believe, and this is nothing against the folks that work at a factory. They also have their own set of challenges, and it's out of their control. I believe when you install these components, because I see them when they're new, they will have some oil in them. That's normal. Like when you install, I think the number one thing on this particular engine that kept leaking oil, and we have to really be careful, is the gears themselves. They leak oil. That's normal, because they have oil inside of them, possibly from testing them, from whatever the case. When you install them, and that assembly oil that they're using to assemble the engine, it's going to run down. You wipe it once, it's fine, but if you leave it for 10-15 seconds, it's going to run down again. And all it takes for this front cover to leak is one tiny drop. That's all it takes. And remember, we have the advantage of working on these cars when, 10,000 mile oil changes and 12,000 mile, 15,000 mile oil changes. The oil now has become darker. You can easily see it. And the parts are older. You can easily see stuff on them. You work at a factory, all you're working on is brand new parts that are very shiny and very clean oil. You may not be able to see a smear of oil. I know some will disagree and say, no, we wipe them down, whatnot. I have one question to that, or one just follow-up question if that's all we do that as well. So why are they leaking? And why are they have been leaking for a very long time and they still do? That's the question. That's what I think. It's just the kind of the downside of also assembling cars extremely fast. Tech time. It's not allowing double checks and things like that. And it happens. Because here's the reality of oil leaks with Toyotas and sealers and front covers and whatnot. Like, let's take an example, an engine, a 2GR, the 3.5 liter that is basically in every single V6 car. Front covers, notorious to leak on these. But you'll have a car with 300,000 miles, not a single drop of leak. I've seen way too many cars with 10,000 miles that have a leak. So why? Because it's not always the case. Not every single one of them got a contamination, but the ones that did, eventually they will leak. That's what I think is the truth. It's because Toyota went through an unbelievable length to bypass that area where the head meets the block meets the front timing cover. And here we are doing a front timing cover on an engine that has that. And this is not the first time, folks. This is something we're starting to see slowly becoming a common thing and a random occurrence. So many, we have a Highlander that with this same engine as a Highlander hybrid, over 300,000 miles, not a drop of leak, nothing. That's so. We go back to the same thing. I feel like we still have the same problem, and it's not a problem. Oh, we can resolve it and we're good. It's going to happen, folks. That's a reality. Because in the end, this is a car designed by humans who are not perfect, built by humans who are not perfect, fixed by yours truly, who's also a human who is not perfect. That's just a reality. I really like this engine for many reasons. We talked about a few of them, but the main thing is, and dare I say it, simplicity. Simplicity not of build and construction and engineering, whatnot, repair. I am not seeing like a 2GR FE. Great engine. Anything you want to do to it has to come out of the car. That's a V6 though. But going to the 2AR FE, you say you have a Camry, you want to pull the front cover. It's extremely tight because you have a giant oil pump inside the front cover that you have to work with. This one, you don't have that. This job was actually not very difficult. Very impressive for an engine that looks so complicated for this job to be this smooth. Let's put it this way. There's no other way to say it. And I've only talked about the things that, with this particular engine, the things that are simple to do, like head gasket or whatnot. But there are other things. This engine has a balance shaft. This balance shaft actually removable extremely simply because the oil pan does not interfere with anything. You can pull that oil pan without pulling exhaust and things like that. It's actually a very small oil pan. But the best part is, as soon as that oil pan comes out, you can pull the balance shaft. That's a good thing. If you want to replace a balance shaft for whatever reason, that's all you got to do. Just pull the oil pan. It's right there. The bad thing is, this is the same with the previous engine to this one, the AR series engine. The balance shaft is not serviceable. Like if you go back to the 2.4 or to a ZFE, the balance shaft was serviceable. You could replace bearings, you could replace the shafts themselves. It was a steel shaft that was robust, and they really, other than the bearings wearing out from low oil, they didn't have any issues. Come the 2 ARFE and the 1 ARFE, the 2.7 and 2.5, basically the engine before this one. We have rattly noises. A lot of them. This is becoming a very common problem with it because the gear on the balance shaft is made out of, some say Teflon steel, some say whatnot. They call it resin. Let me translate that, plastic. to kind of absorb some of the vibrations as well. That wears out over time, it starts rattling. Well, bad news, this engine has the same thing. So I haven't seen one yet, but it's a matter of time, because it's basically a plastic part. It's eventually going to wear out at some point, and it's going to start making rattling noises. Either rattle at idle, extreme loud rattle, or rattle as soon as you accelerate. That gear shakes a little bit and makes that rattle. Exactly the same design as the 2A RFE, which has a major problem with that right now. The only other thing with this engine, and this is, you see me working on that right now, this is not a subframe mounted engine, this is a body mounted engine. I hope that makes sense. Basically, the engine is hung on the body, not a little stabilizer at the top, and then it's physically sitting on the subframe. So that mount on the side is a little bit, I don't want to say tricky, but a little bit different. If you want to do work on it, you have to lift up the engine a little bit to remove that mount. Not difficult, a lot of Toyota engines have that, but this is one of the differences. Like, we used to see that. This is something that happened with the TNGA platform, that we switched to this. Well, this job is actually coming close to an end pretty smoothly. I'm happy with everything. Granted, this is a newer car. And here's something that you all always call me out about: the mileage. This is a 2019 Toyota RAV4 with around almost 39,000 miles. Not a lot of miles, and it has this leak. Not a big thing. It's already fixed. It's already done. But would I buy an extended warranty for this engine? Tough one. I don't see enough chronic problems, but if you end up having the injector problem that we talked about, injectors are pretty expensive, direct injectors. I mean, they're expensive, properly expensive. If you have those twice, and a combination of this oil leak or a radio going out or whatnot, I may justify an extended warranty if it's a good one, if it's not ridiculously priced. But otherwise, this engine is looking really good, folks. I like it. I think this one is a good one. It's gonna last. We're not seeing a lot of chronic issues that are disastrous, like Thunder engine just randomly deciding to call it quits. So we're in the final wrap up here. You're going to hear this engine run a little bit. Covers are very simple on this engine to remove. They're actually they're becoming universal. All the cars will have exactly the same cover underneath them, which is pretty interesting. Makes service very simple. You have two modern Toyotas, they'll be exactly the same. Remove a door, there we go, oil change, very simple. Let's go run this engine. Let's hear it run, and then we'll wrap up this video. And this job is done. It did give us a scare when we started it. Chain started rattling, but that tensioner we talked about, it took some time for it to build up pressure, and then everything was quiet. We cold started today. This is actually the third day here. Cold started today. Everything sounds nice and quiet. Everything is good. No issues, no codes, no any issues whatsoever. We already did final cleaning on the engine stuff. This was not a terrible job. See, new engines are not always terrible to work on. This one is not. I actually like the 825A. We talked about it throughout this video. But folks, I hope this video was helpful, informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. Until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.